to dedicate someone to make sure we always record, because if no one is dedicated, we always forget.
So yeah, so all right, we interface with Callus, myself, John Woodard, the strategic team of Wolfram, and then there's a technical team, and actually another team that we've kind of helped bring this to light. So part of this process is educating ourselves first, and then educating Wolfram consultants internally who don't necessarily have a great grip on what blockchain is and like what's going on inside of a decentralized governance community and why do people even care. So that was part of the learning curve, and basically it was, let's ship as much Callus data as we have to them and see what type of data science analytics can they come up with. This is showing 6 funds because we didn't go all the way back into 1, 2, and 3. Basically used whatever was programmable enough from spreadsheets, and Darlington, I'm sure, is aware of what that is, and so basically this is going to look a lot like anything that's possible, anything that's available from the the closeout projects, the ongoing funding, the voting results, and then start to just kind of key in. And so if you just want to get some overviews of things and you want to look at fund date, dApps, and integrations, you can start to see like, all right, well, here's just how the process played out. Here's the funding amount. Here are the projects that got funded. Here are the ones that were just on the edge of it. Does this point out anything interesting for a new person? Here's a brief intro to what that is. Can we go deeper? Can you pull this and tweet it out? Can you get the CSV file? And on this left side here is just additional things that you can add and look at. But every variation of types of analytics on challenges, proposals, proposers, ratings, and so we're kind of just trying to run that as far as it can go with what the currently available data is. And then we've started to pull things from Twitter and from the Cardano forum and from Reddit, which hasn't populated on here yet, but we're trying to look at important statistics, whether somebody's creating a lot of conversation around current CIP, or a particular influencer is speaking out about something. Can we capture that inside of analytics and then direct conversation towards it, really amplify things, pull out the metrics in different ways? So yeah, I'll just pause there, and if we want to talk, and go ahead, Kenrick.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt you right away, but I did have a question at some point. And that is, when you pull data from something like Twitter, like how do you filter it? Do you have terms that you filter around? Is that what you're doing, or how do you filter the data?
Yeah, we're filtering from like certain root accounts, keywords, trying to identify journalists and media companies. Okay,
so root accounts, you mean like influencers within the Cardano community?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay.
And I mean, that process really needs to get more community insight into. So once the dashboard is put out there, we're looking to hear from people that say like, hey, like, is there coverage of this account? I haven't seen this. And it's like, all right, that was something that we weren't aware of. But I think the way that this project has been, or at least the social data is kind of pulled through, was let's look at all of the major key terms, and then let's look at the influencers that are important on, or not important, but is there a metric that offers an insight onto who's speaking about this most, and then let's cover them. Okay, and then let's pull the keywords from their searches. But we are detailing this so that it can be understood in more detail. I am not deep on this aspect of the social stuff.
Yeah. Can I understand like what would be required for you from Wolfram side right now to get this live?
We're having that conversation this week. It's just populating it on the database. Basically, like our internal group, it's called the technical consulting group. They're running it on their server infrastructure, and basically it's a cost to them that, you know, it was basically they needed to run it themselves in order to get this up and running, but now it needs to shift over to another group's kind of infrastructure. So it's just kind of a move from one here to here, and can we facilitate it? It's
Okay,
not a big, it's not a big deal.
Corporate stuff sounds like sounds like my time at PwC. But yeah, okay, that's really cool. Like I really think this whole dashboard is super useful. So,
well, you know, I want to think that, but I also don't want to presume that we're creating something that hasn't gotten a ton of light from the community yet before really like, yeah, I think it's useful. It's just, let's make sure that more people are able to see it, and then it'll give us the feedback, because to be honest, everybody in this room is really close to the community. I'm attempting to be as close to the community as I can, but I mean, you're in the weeds of it, really have a little bit of a deeper insight. So I don't want to sit from a slightly removed spot and say that this is what you need to know. We're still learning in that process. I mean, I think everybody understands that.
I think you're being humble though too, Steph. I mean, this is a fantastic tool. I think the community would be really excited about having this kind of access to quantitative data.
Absolutely.
Let me share, let's see, so this is kind of the back end infrastructure on what we're doing, and I think this is an even more interesting part, because, you know, we're going to evolve as funds evolve and as Callus evolves. And so now that we have a team who understands what this process is, and Patrick, to your point, there's a corporate flow of information and infrastructure. Now that we kind of have that in place, it's going to be a lot easier for us to update with each fund and import new things. And so the iteration process, I think, gets faster. This one has been, I would say we were slightly behind pace, but it's just, I think, you know, we need to be able to grow with the infrastructure. And so whatever we threw at that team, they took in, they made sense of, and now it's coming out as those metrics and analytics. What's up, Darlington?
Yep, great. This is super cool. I'm just my eyes looking at the API thing over there. Would that be open to the community for integration?
So yes, my push is yes. That's what they're also currently building out. So Patrick, that's kind of one thing that I wanted the dashboard to launch with, that it's not in currently, but that's something that they're working on right now. So I think that's super important.
It is, and the appetite for Catalyst data, I don't know, but the Light Donation tool sees about 1,500 queries, like rich queries every month. Even this whole time, like, so outside of the hype cycle of the voting, right? So people are going, they're trying to find things. It will be, and I think one of the direction that team was going in for Fontaine is to then be able to surface charts from whatever it is you're looking at right now. You know.
Yeah.
So, but hooking into an API to just pull those in, that would be super cool. And I have to build that.
So we're very aware of like how awesome Light Donation tools are, and I think again, to be humble and to also just be realistic, is that Wolfram, Stephen Wolfram has built these tools over 35 years and has basically built in, we can do everything inside of a Mathematica notebook. However, not everybody is going to want to access these things in this way. And that's something that I'm aware of. And so if we can support from a back-end point of view, people like yourself and any other community members, the ability to make their own front ends, because let's focus on what we're definitely good at and a little bit less at and then just allow other people to be great at what they're great at, I think could be really powerful. So, so yeah, that we're thinking about it that way. That is definitely how I want to think about it. And I would say that there is just a conversation, not pushback, but there's a conversation around, can we make sure that that is definitely the way that this goes and evolves, as opposed to being a little more closed off. You know what I mean? And so, you know, we're just trying to run the gamut of whatever types of metrics, quantitative metrics, any type of, you know, this is stuff that we're definitely very familiar with. And it's just, we need to make sense of things that look like this so that people can dive in and find use for it immediately. But we're definitely getting there for sure.
Patrick, I think you were first, and I'll certainly want to double click on a couple of the charts if that's all right, Steph.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question is basically, what can we do to support this? From my perspective, before you answer the question, from my perspective, it's two things. So one of them is about visibility, which is quite obvious. I would say that's something we can do, like even just going in there, screenshotting different plots, explaining them on Twitter, showcasing them, linking to the tool, stuff like that when it goes live, I think would be immensely valuable for the community. You know, that's also what we've seen from what Daniel has been doing in the past, like when he posts random data from Catalyst. That's always what is interesting for people, right? So this is something I think we, at least I'm not speaking for the circle as a whole, but I'm just spitballing ideas here. This is something I think we should do as a circle, because that's exactly like what we should do. Basically, the communication between Catalyst behind the scenes and the community, right? And the second thing, and this is where it's more dependent on you, Steph, is like, I don't know what exactly the long-term plans for this are from Wolfram's side, but I think if it's about providing data or making sure that this continues for future funding rounds, and I've seen you have it in a Google Sheet and stuff like that, if that's something where the circle could come in, I don't know how exactly, but that would be interesting to know, if you understand what I'm trying to explain here.
I think I understand up until, so could you just say the kind of second half of that again?
So is there a need, and is there a benefit of the circle basically coming in and saying, okay, we're gonna make sure to have this continue in the next funding rounds as well? Because I don't know how much money Wolfram got for this project. I don't know
Okay.
how long that is planned out, but it would be a shame to say, okay, we're gonna, stop providing the data for it, and then it just gets shut down. And this would be something where I could see the circle come in and just operate it basically for the long term, something like that.
Okay, I understand the question. Obviously, we want to be sustainable and not dependent on Catalyst,
Right.
because I think that's ultimately the point. Which, so we're super grateful for the Kickstart, which is the Catalyst, and so we received $50,000 to do the governance analytics, which is basically the data wrangling, making it computable, getting it into a way that we understand it, and then this dashboard is $50,000. And long story short, corporate, the way that it works is those projects do have end dates. And so it's a good question about where's the balance between the project having end dates and keeping the attention of those internal groups of where, hey, we asked for this help. Here were the things that we needed to complete, and it's been completed. How do you avoid that being like, okay, we completed what you asked for, and versus the ongoing evolution of the stuff? So I do think there's a place for what you're suggesting and pointing at, Patrick. We're not hesitant to re-enter Catalyst in the next funding round. However, it would be a second priority to being sustainable from our own point of view. And so I think that's what we're looking to do is just really be valuable enough to find support some way. And there's several other initiatives. Some could support this while those are getting traction. We have 7 projects across Fund 8 and Fund 9, and it's a lot's going on. So, but yeah, I appreciate that thought. I wonder if other people agree with or disagree with some of the stuff I said there.
Maybe someone else.
Darlington, how are you thinking about that stuff in like a similar, what you're doing is digesting a lot of data. It's very helpful and it's being put out in front of the community. People are using it, but in terms of sustainability from the work you're doing and in that end, how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, that's been the question of the century, right? The sustainability part. I feel like what the Light Donation team has focused on is starting to work on some commercial products, separate from the Catalyst stuff, as a way to sustain the company, and then because I don't see out the Catalyst. We haven't found out how to make that self-sustaining. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Yeah, and just sometimes when I get very close to these things, I'm like down here, and so I'm very narrow focused. We are expanding to focus on NFTs. We are expanding to focus on different levels of analytics. So it's not just Catalyst, but Catalyst is where the origination comes from, and really where I find truly like powerful dynamics in governance. It's one of the main reasons I'm in crypto, because I feel like we have a new way of approaching some of the most important things that are going to play out in the next decade. So I do want to be in this space. I do want to make things that are governance related. And then this is not filled out yet, but we do have a section where we're trying to have, if people take this data and make something out of it, can we feature them on here? We're beginning to do a podcast where we interview founders from around the blockchain space. We want to do that with Catalyst specific people. I see a route for sustainability there. Excuse me. We're putting on an academic research conference called Chain Science. That's in June. That's going to happen in Boston. Let me just. I'm bringing this up just because there's. Let me see. Yeah. So this is the work that I did with Kenrick. It was about understanding how the power dynamics play out inside the governance system. That's going to be valuable in many other systems. We want to get this into kind of a mobile friendly way. We do want to create indexes, and this is kind of blockchain agnostic when you get to an index level, but of course, we're starting somewhere. And here are our main focus areas. We're doing back-end infrastructure, intelligence, which is what I would put this dashboard into, in Oracle service, and then research and education, which is really where my focus is. But we have an Oracle white paper that we're working on. We are building out the ability for people to access real-world facts on Wolfram Alpha. And can we input real-world data, get a smart contract written, and copy it and input it into your into your application. So a lot of people do ask about Oracle services. Here are our study groups and our online courses. That's another route. The beginning of our podcast. These are UTXO Alliance members, the conference. So yeah, Catalyst Oracles. Oracles is a really tough problem, and I think it's a fascinating problem that a lot of people do think about. There's a lot more to say there, but and then this is something where we're doing like a token economic system. One of our lead economists is from Australia, from the New South Wales state, and there's koalas are going extinct essentially in that area. And what she did was wrote a paper and designed a system where you balance koalas' rights to trees with smart contract, and you balance the loggers and how much logging you can actually do. And then the New South Wales state government establishes this system for incentivizing different token systems, and hopefully it benefits everybody. So we think that we're really tapping into new economic and governance systems, and we have tools to be able to do this in more of a scientific way. So I'm just kind of rambling now, but those are some of the things we're working on.
Hey, Mick, do you want to go? And I mean, as I said, I've got a load of thoughts about this, but I'm keen to get everybody else's inputs first.
Okay, sure. Well, I just wanted to add, to what Steph said about the project we did on the voting power. We have that. He has a Wolfram notebook operating on that, and at the moment, it only works for a small group of voters. So our next step is to try to add some statistical analysis so that we can do analysis of the Catalyst voting and the future DREP voting for the Cardano network. And I'm going to host a town hall tomorrow on this issue with regard to CIP 1694, because there's elements of the design that actually lead to centralization rather than decentralization. And I think Steph was really helpful in helping us analyze those issues with our DREP white paper last summer.
Not just myself, there was definitely at least two other Wolfram employees that did a heavy lifting of that calculation. So I just say that because that type of stuff does take time.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're definitely kind of highlighting that as part of our governance analytics project. But I've failed to mention that can you dive deeper? This information is what's available. And so can you basically just have different ways of getting to it? Can you see the reviews? And this is one of the interesting things that we're trying to consider, and I don't know yet how to share this with the community, but it's just the reviewing process, along with the now LLMs and ChatGPTs of the world, where I think everybody's aware that there's going to be proposals that are very easy to make, that are very obviously like human readable. And so our data science team was like, these proposals need to be more quantitative based, because that's what's going to allow us to quantitatively measure and kind of separate the quality projects from not quality projects, but allow us to actually rate something about a proposal so that we can maybe be more efficient with how they get reviewed. And I'm sure there's a lot of conversations around that, but we're not exactly sure what that framework is. But from our point of view, the more quantitative that a proposal can be is going to allow us to kind of cut through the potential LLM noise, and allow us to review things a bit quicker or more efficiently. Again, I don't know if that's, it's a helpful thought, but implementing it has knock-on effects.
It's definitely an interesting and a very timely moment that we've entered into, right? Particularly, we've had the pause where we were discussing last time that maybe some of this meeting would be used to look at the proposed draft changes to the proposal submission process and the criteria, right? So, and Steph, maybe just have some background. And we demonstrated this as a proposal on Town Hall last week, that certainly the UI and the voting app and the voting interfaces is going to change, so that we're sort of not eliminating or diminishing the importance of community opinion, but reframing how the information is presented to voters, right? That's one thing. And what I mean by that is removing the prominence of the star rating as the first initial the first information that you're hit with, and that then primes voters. Right? We saw that, I'm sure you probably saw in Fund 9 data.
Yeah, you can definitely see. You can definitely see that the ratings are hugely influential.
Maybe you. Well, I think they're influential, and also the review process became skewed, right? And I've talked about on a bunch of cases. In a typical grant program, you would expect there to be like a bell curve, right? The meat of the bell will be like middling proposals. There'll be some extremities low scoring, and then some extremities high scoring, right? You wouldn't expect the majority of proposals to score the highest, like nearly top marks or top marks, and that's kind of what we saw. So yeah, it's definitely been a key priority to look at changing the process and criteria. We can talk a little bit about that today for sure. and as like a kind of nugget around that, one of the ideas here is, we've implemented this statement to milestones pilot, and whilst I don't think we should fix proposals before the vote to the statement and milestones format, because the world changes from the moment you submit the proposal to when you're actually greenlit to go forward, right? And if you've fixed everybody around a particular format, it becomes a bit challenging. What I mean is, if you had to create a statement of milestones as your proposal, and then that followed you post-vote into execution, the world changes, and what you'd find is there would just be an inordinate amount of changes being requested and made at the green light moment. Like, once the projects have been voted on, everything's good to go, and then people are going to want to make changes to their fixed statement of milestones because they wrote it as part of a proposal 3-4 months ago, right?
Right.
So there's a change there. However, you can still take, I believe, aspects and components of what you would want to see in a statement of milestones, which becomes pretty quantifiable or fixed and specific, and have that percolated through the proposal, right? So, and I think it'd be quite difficult, maybe this is maybe I should say this. I don't want to, run
Stop
the gauntlet
recording.
here, right? No, it's not that. I don't want to run the gauntlet like with, it'd be really difficult to be able to, have ChatGPT write a really, really comprehensive, effective, well-conceived project plan. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But I think you can build, objectives, milestones, goals, evidence of achievement type ideas into the proposal form that would be quite difficult for a machine to spin up arbitrarily, right? That's one certain thing that, and I'd like to think that the changes that we're proposing and that the community are all going to contribute to refining will help us to get to a position where we've got a stronger set of objective criteria to be able to assess against, and questions that people can sort of follow. So that's certainly one thing. I definitely see that, to the point, coming back to the idea of sort of sustainability and the kind of concepts of openness and transparency, like, all of this is extremely valuable. And so the work that your team have been doing, the work that the Darlington and the Lido team do, and our own Catalyst website team that's put out projectcatalyst.io, there needs to be some sort of common back end and data architecture that everybody can call, and that it becomes very streamlined, it's open, it's accessible, it's inclusive. Where I think the Catalyst team's remit sort of stops at the moment is on this front end delivery. Like, the website's out there now. If there's opportunities to start doing integrations or shifting to being able to have other providers contribute to these sorts of interfaces, that would be awesome. And one of the things that we've sort of talked about a little bit, but I don't, today's not the time to really double click on it, is this notion of Catalyst bounties, where there'll be well identified, well defined needs that we already understand, and that we know what the solution should be, and which is quite different to what the Catalyst innovation funding is really about, right? It's like, come at this with your great ideas and the community is going to vote on it, but if there's sort of key tooling which is going to support Catalyst infrastructure, Catalyst administration, Catalyst communications, this kind of stuff, you could imagine that there could be like RFPs that are created, and then proposals that are put forward, they're evaluated in a slightly different manner, and then they can get executed and then funded in a slightly different manner than or outright the current voting mechanism that we're already operating. So I certainly see that all being well, if things go according to how we'd like them to go, that sort of program is going to be realized during Fund 10. And we'll be able to initiate that kind of stuff. Now, what would be in that type of program is I think yet to be determined. But I'm sort of spitballing some ideas here that you can imagine that there would be, needs for these types of tools to be persistent and available and always on. And so, does it merit, having to go through the Catalyst grant funding process to be able to realize that, right? Are there more efficient operational ways to be able to achieve those sorts of outcomes without having it be a big disruption to the current processes? And to people like yourselves to teams like yourselves that have already built all this and are now looking for a way for it to be sustained, if I would see this as as an important set of tools for sort of support services, community services for Catalyst, for sure. I do have a couple of questions on the actual charts, but Kenrick, you've probably got some thoughts and feelings about this.
Well, let me just try to ask a quick question from what you said, Chris. I understand that in parallel with Catalyst, there has been a Cardano development fund. I'm not sure I'm using the right phrase, but that never seemed as open in public. I'm aware that people were getting funded for projects, but I was never kind of clued into what the process for those decisions were.
Me neither, if I'm absolutely honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's out of my purview.
Okay.
I'm sure it's out anything. I mean, Alex might know something about it. Since Alex from Foundation is here, is there anything that you can speak to on that, Alex?
A Cardano development fund?
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge. I mean, there's very limited grant funding from the foundation on an ad hoc basis. The only thing that I'm aware of is the decentralized consortium fund that was kind of conceptualized a couple of years ago, but wasn't followed through.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I mean, what I want to just caveat is like the sort of things that I was talking about. None of that's obviously, it's not a given. We're hoping that we're going to be able to create these sorts of new initiatives, but again, it's going to require community consent to go forward with, right? And that's really important. So I've mentioned over the last couple of weeks or the last few weeks whilst we've been in circle meetings that slowly by slowly more and more information is coming out, and we'll be keen to share more and more about this in the coming weeks. What I'd really like to do, Steph, is plug this recording and a couple of the hope you don't mind, I took a couple of screen grabs as well. Pass this over to Stephen Johnson, who's our lead architect, and just make him aware that this is the sorts of outputs that are coming from Wolfram. And it'd be really cool to be able to think about this in the round of the architecture and design that he's working on.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, talk me, if you can you talk me through the proposer correlation heat map? That seems like an interesting little number, and I'm not quite sure what it means.
I'm
I
to
don't
be
worry
honest,
if you
still
can't.
digesting. But because so I do have a number of questions on some of these, and really, so to really answer your question, I'm just beginning to kind of make sense of what it is. But if we put the attributes both on the left and the right, at what point do we find some significant number about what occurs for next level of funding? So this This one across the board is not interesting because it's just number completed on this bottom axis matches with number completed on this bottom axis. But if you go number completed, meaning number of projects completed, and the number of proposals that somebody has submitted is a good indication of somebody that gets things done. And so that's why that number is high, and the highest number can be 1. I think because we're using downvotes, which is can be represented negatively. I'm not exactly sure if that's the case, but of why we get, well, no, that's not the case. Because we can have opposite correlations. So one's going to be a positive correlation, one's going to be a negative correlation. So if the more downvotes you get, the less the average rating should be lower.
So the idea would be that this would be based on a particular proposal. So, you know, it would be like, for example, like Lido Nation or Darlington's put in a proposal, then it will do some sort of heat map based on proposals from Darlington, right?
Yeah, it is proposer based, not proposal. Yeah, so it is from, so yeah, this is taking a proposer's average ratings, excuse me, their average upvotes, downvotes, the percentage of them being funded. So if they've submitted 10 and gotten 5, they've got 50%. So in what colors does this represent? You know, if this was, so if we went highly negative, it would probably come up as red, and that would mean if you're getting a lot of downvotes and your average rating is low, that's an indication that this proposer is an indication of what not to do in your proposal, and but it's measuring it based on the proposer.
Well, you know what I'd like to see this used
Yes.
for? Applying this to proposer assessors, community reviewers. Right? Like if you have a propensity and a tendency to be like overly euphoric and optimistic, or super grumpy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Is the community reviewers, what's their average review? If it's 5.0s across the board, it's probably something that we can decide something on. If they're there's the thing, grumpiness score in Grant's world, is there not?
Yeah. So I've talked about this before. So in my previous life, one of my colleagues made this matrix for all Innovate UK assessors, which would put them somewhere on a range between grumpy and euphoric. And then when you do auto allocation, and when you allocate out thousands of proposals on the big smart grant program, which is thousands of proposals coming in each 3 months, not too dissimilar to Catalyst really, but at a nation in the UK scale, and you know, small businesses through to universities, scale ups, large businesses, everything, all industries, all sectors. Smart grants is like an open program. Then they want to have a range of attitudes, right? You don't want to put 5 euphoric people together. You don't want to put 5 or even 4 grumpy people together on one euphoric. You kind of want a range, but also then it allows some qualification of outliers, right? Like if you're persistently just giving top marks or persistently giving low marks, then it's easier to identify that kind of stuff.
I love that idea. As I was reading some of my own reviews through here, and you know, these are people reviewing projects before they've seen anything about it, and so they are just going on, what did you write here? And there are some very accurate kind of, here are my concerns and here are my thoughts, and they're very honest and fair. If you can get the top team of reviewers together and then just supply, this is just a thought, but just supply that top team of reviewers with the tools they need to be more efficient, you know, it brings, I don't know what it would bring, but it's interesting that that's an indication of, hey, here are your ranges. You are very optimistic, but you're fair, and you are skew pessimistic, but you're fair, and you dig into the details, and we put you together, and now you have, and now you are using ChatGPT to kind of summarize some things and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have an ambition to, I think there should be an ambition to be able to provide voters with more data, right, at the point of decision making. And maybe not to the detriment of, you know, overkill and, you know, layering too many data points so that, you know, they kind of get analysis paralysis. But
right.
Being able to kind of have an indication of sort of sentiment or previous community reviewer opinion. I'm just trying to sort of think about where there could be adaptations that could be made, right? Like we know the Greer and Feed Index, the Fear and Greed Index, but imagine applying that to sort of community reviews and opinions.
Right. So we do have, I mean, that is something that we are able to do. And if we do that specifically, not to the proposal, but to the reviewers, we can start to classify those sentiments, and we can know, actually know what the parameters are that give us a reason for why it's positive and negative. You can do this with any LLM, but we'll know inside of Wolfram language why, at what point it was classified positive or negative, and then you can at least determine for yourself if you agree or disagree with that, versus being confused about it. You know, this was clever language. So that's good to know. If we bring in a correlation matrix, heat map, and then also have a grumpiness or sentiment analysis combined with it on the reviews, I'm going to be writing that one down, taking it to the team.
Definitely an interesting additional data point. And part of the thrust here is certainly not to, like, you know, be judge and jury over a particular individual's contribution in this particular stage, right? But what do we know? We do know that we need to get better at discouraging people just giving things high scores and just being overly optimistic about things. And one of the reasons for that is because, you know, maybe within that group, there's a small number, a very small minority that are actively pursuing another agenda, right? And so, you know, tools that help to provide, analysis, and then be able to have, whether it's the circle or, you know, some other governance structure, to be able to be primed with information about performance, and then to be able to make, you know, some sort of decision on what to do. Like, for example, if when we get to the point of what was the VPA stage, the QA stage, instead of having those VPAs and those QAs, or what we're sort of terming level 2 reviewers now, instead of having them be judge and jury and be like, no, this reviewer, it's, you know, clearly trying to game the system, bye. That's based on them reading their reviews, looking at the scores, and trying to make some sort of subjective decision as to whether to include it or not, right? you've got really no basis other than that information to kind of make any more objective thoughts and feelings about what to do with it. But you could imagine maybe at that stage, certainly what we've been talking about, what we talked about last week, was instead of having that level 2 person be the judge and jury over the back of that and having to review every single proposal review that's taken place, there'll be a set of scripts that have already been run that produce a bunch of flags. And then I could imagine something like what we just talked about as being another set of data for at least a moderator function to be able to go, actually, it does make sense that the flags have raised this, and we've got a reasonable understanding of track record. And then, as I said, I would imagine rather than being judge and jury, then they are making a recommendation that it possibly needs to go into a flagged pool for then, a governance, for governance then to take place, and that governance to be, spun, the process to be spun up maybe through Circle, some sort of other function and group of people that are able to look at all of these flags and flag reviews in the round.
You made me think of this is going to go in a different direction, so I won't share.
Go for it.
Well, you made me think that if we review in the open, then yes, you can't have the best reviewers review all proposals, but you can have the process of how they review revealed and done in a way that's transferable. And it was just making me think that, like, we these 24-hour spaces that Darlington and many others have put on before, what if you're just reviewing project 10 minutes and whatever eyeballs are there, you're doing it together. I know that brings up some difficulty, but at least when you're reviewing in the open, you're developing that process, and then somebody signs off after an hour or two, and well, what they brought that was great to that process is now stuck within the community, and it transfers. Again, a bit of a different way of what you were talking about, but that's what you made me think of.
Interesting. All very interesting. It's I can certainly see some applications beyond what I did want to ask. What's a Banzaf pi? But maybe Kenrick.
That's the Banzaf power index, and it's it hasn't made its way onto the dashboard yet, but it is it is essentially given a certain amount of voters, can you determine how much power that swing voter has? And that was we did the deeper analysis on Fund 5 voting data that we were able to see, like, if we made the many thousands of potential voters, the 30,000+ potential voters, into 10 cohorts, because computationally we had to reduce it, and just 10% of them colluded, it wouldn't matter what the rest of the 90% did. So the Banzaf power index allows you to kind of see those dynamics, and we want to make sure that calculator is available for others to start to play with, determine that type of insight. It won't be at the level of that research we've done together, but it's to get there.
What I do love about that is that, sorry, Gary, just to say, what I do love about that approach is that it's these sorts of data point and data across the whole, 9-10 funds that we will have in a period of time. that then helps to make the case for any adaptations to the voting schema, right?
Yeah. And I think this is crucial because there's still a huge misconception or misunderstanding in the general population generally, but also within Catalyst and Cardano, that people think their power is proportional to the number of votes they have. That's not correct. Your power is proportional to the number of times your vote swings the decision one way or another. And that turns out to increase nonlinear with the number of votes you have. So there's this huge problem that arises when we weight things by one coin, one vote. It seems fair. You're just distributing by how invested you are in Cardano, in the coin. But the problem is your power actually grows approximately quadratically. And part of what I'll talk about in tomorrow's meeting is that it also drives a process of even further centralization, because those with only a few coins, as far as governance goes, if you're holding the coin to participate in governance, if you only hold a few coins, your best investment is to sell that coin to someone that's wealthy and walk away from the system, because you only lose a small amount of power, and the wealthy person actually gains a gigantic amount of power by that same amount of coins. And so I think, working with Wolfram and getting that tool to be scalable to analyzing large voting pools in Catalyst and Cardano is going to be hugely influential in informing the community about just how centralized our processes are. We're attempting to build decentralized governance, but we haven't actually done it yet.
So we only have 5 more minutes. That's why I would like to circle back a little bit to the circle. Circle back to the circle, and what our potential role could be in this, and maybe conclude with the other circle members if we should, or what we can do to basically support this effort. So what do you think, Darlington and Melanie and Nebu?
I mean, I think right now, the only thing the circle can do in the short term is awareness, reaching out to projects specifically, letting them know what's going on, and having them link to this tool. That is one short-term thing we can do for sure.
So what do we need for that? We need to know maybe when you will be able to provide it to the public stuff. I know it's a difficult question, but
This month.
okay.
This month, yes. I don't know how quickly after the meeting that's happening this week it will become shareable. Like, and I'm ready to put it out now. It's just people won't be able to access it. But yeah, this month for sure.
Okay, could you let us know before you release so that we can be prepared to when you release it to hammer out a bunch of stuff on social media for it, and give some Twitter threads about it, how to use it, etc.
Absolutely, I would very much appreciate that.
Perfect. That's
You'd
great.
definitely be joining us on Town Hall for a rundown and an overview, project closeout. To say a kind of epic mega Wolfram bumper presentation would be awesome.
Yes, definitely, Chris.
I don't know if it's the next meeting or the, one of these meetings soon. When would project Catalyst.io be able to start linking to some of these tools too, since that is the main place we send people to now?
Yeah, good question. So we actually, to sort of mention, next week, if you're open to having another working group session next week, I'd like to invite Stephen Johnson, our lead architect, to go through our plans for, or proposed plans for the new architecture design. And then we can consider and actually raise this as part of the discussion.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Good idea.
On the point of what else could be done, you remember last week when we sort of talked about the sort of vision for where Circle could evolve to with creating proposals. I think it's an important moment to start thinking about, well, what would putting a proposal forward look like, and what are you proposing? So if we're thinking about this as like a core part of, you know, Catalyst communications tooling, and this data and the great work that Wolfram have done needs to be supported somehow. How could that be? How could a proposal be created to be able to look to support it beyond Catalyst funding? I think that's something that we should start thinking about, perhaps.
Will the video recording of this be available to myself, at least?
It's intended to be public, actually.
Okay. I just want to get, you know, there's a lot that was talked about, so I just want to refresh myself and bring those into the different conversations I'm having behind the scenes.
We have a nice folder for that in the chat, and you can access that folder for all Catalyst meeting recordings and all descriptions, transcriptions, sorry. Except for the one last week, because I think that Chris recorded that one and we don't have it in there yet.
I'll give it to you. I will send it to you.
Thank you.
Don't worry.
Thanks. Can I request that everybody do that? Look through their folders and see what they have relevant to CCv4 and drop it in that folder. Because we do have recordings, but we don't have all of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yes, Alex, we are going to, Hosky's going to be doing that today. He's going to do a pinned tweet with the link to the public drive on our Twitter.
Folks, I was actually hoping to dive into another topic as well today, but I don't know how much time you all have. So I want to ask if anybody's available and open to staying for like another 20 minutes or so.
I'm available.
Are you interested in having me, Chris, or is this for Circle?
It's kind of up to you guys. I think you're already here. So
It's always enjoyable to stay, but I do have to drop off. It's been great visiting with you all, and I hope to have some of you join us tomorrow for a discussion on governance.
cheers, Kenrick. Good to see you.
Take care,
Thank you.
Henry.
Goodbye.
How are you doing for time, Patrick and Alex and Nebia?
Time is a very scarce resource in my life, but I'm doing okay. We can continue.
Okay, so I'll try and whiz through this as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
So I was going to talk to you about the proposal submission form today, but I think actually this is a bit more interesting and exciting, as this is a bit more forward looking beyond just the proposal submission form. So we started a piece of work quite a few months ago to think about how do we, one of the big main goals for the Catalyst team has been to improve the user experience. No, not just on the technology, but also the processes and the actual grants program itself. And so I sort of embarked on a gap analysis. And this was sort of driven by initially work that was done by George Lovegrove, and then the Catalyst GPS team, Nadia, Tommy, and their colleagues. And given there was two sort of distinct proposals that were put together on how to restructure strategy, I decided to take the time to go through sort of a gap analysis on both of those proposals and look to see whether we can draw any new insights and inferences and ways forward. So really this gap analysis was focused on how do we think about streamlining operations, how do we streamline the voter experience, how do we look to consolidate our approaches to better measure impact, and then think about things like the scale of and scope of project sizes, their potential impacts, and what that's then impacts on in terms of the teams and communities' capabilities to be able to support these projects ongoing. And I know that's a bit of a word salad, but that's sort of the premise for this. And so what I want to take you through is just a couple of the background steps, and then or the background context, the problems to be solved, and then open up this to the proposal that we'd like to think about introducing after Fund 10. So really what this anchors around is how do we ensure that Catalyst funds go to the right priorities at the right time with efficiency and accountability. Some of this stuff has already begun to be unpacked and improved. The statement of milestones pilot and moving to milestone-based funding, having proof of achievements, that helps to really backfill maybe these gaps in accountability, I believe. Having community play more of a role in supporting the verification that funded teams have delivered what they say they were going to deliver. All that really, I think, helps to sort of strike through that accountability line to some extent. But what it doesn't necessarily do is help us to understand whether the funding is still going towards the right priorities. And to date, really, we don't have a lot of good ways, and this is why I think it's important that you stay around, Steph, to be able to analyse what's gone towards making the decisions on what challenges or themes should take priority. We don't have really good data-driven mechanisms to support that currently. So when we think about why we might need to change funding processes, they need to be able to work with goal prioritization. We need to be able to understand what's a priority now and what's going to bring the most benefit in the short term, and also begin to continue evolving this priority sensing. I believe that it's going to come a time in the not too distant future where the community is going to play a really significant role in deciding and determining what parameters are part of the Catalyst fund or Catalyst operations. And we do need to think about how do we increase data-driven approaches for making these decisions. We also know that we need to scale, we need to mature, and I believe that we're getting ready for this parameter pilot. Who raised a hand? Patrick?
I did. How do you imagine this to be? Like right now, if you think about the categories, the problem basically is, or problem, however you want to call it, is that the categories get proposed with a certain amount of ADA already. And you could simply remove the amount of ADA and then base the amount of ADA that goes to this category on the number of votes, and then you automatically have a parameter.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily data driven, it's just voter driven at that point, right?
True, yeah.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. And this is why I think there's an imperative to and a reason to look at how do we change things. But I want to talk through a couple of the issues, right? So what we find is that today, challenge settings proposed and voted on by the community, there is really not that much strong evidence of consultation prior to set priorities. We know that few challenges persist. Product apps and integration seems to persist. Dev eco seems to persist. Atala challenges seem to persist, and then MISC is sort of on and off, right? But what we definitely do know is that there's enormous energy spent by the community proposing and then campaigning for their challenge proposals, and most of these challenge proposals then go unrealized, and again it creates sort of disincentive to continue campaigning. And And then, on the back end, a lot of proposals don't fit the challenges unless there's a misc challenge, right? Also, this idea of enormous energy, I think really it begins to create, and we've seen it demonstrably create tribalism within the context of Catalyst, and divisiveness. And the way that I, in a friendly way, describe this, you've got like the Cardano for Cats people arguing that their challenge is more important than the Cardano for Dogs people. You've got the Cardano for Giraffes people that are new and fresh, and they're not really well known. And, they don't even get a look in because they haven't got much share of voice currently, right? And that's a really crude way of sort of saying it, but it's true. We see it. And then, these challenges are, they're taking away a lot of energy from spending that time on making proposals and, the actual solution, the ideation around solution. It takes away a lot from that process, because people are spending time focusing on challenge setting and not necessarily, coming at it from a position of there's a really, really strong rationale as to why to do this, right? There's not as much data that supports the justification why that challenge should be chosen over another, and it becomes a bit more like a popularity contest. So yeah, this sort of then speaks to the third point, that these priorities are really not set without guardrails or then fund-to-fund consistency. So if we could just remove all of those issues, and rather than it being about divisiveness and tribalism, we create conditions for collaboration, surely that would be a better use of energy. But we don't really have those processes set up yet. So going sort of a step further, what we should sort of see is maybe the goals of this is to make it more easier for users to participate in. So if you're new, and we hear this all the time, and you don't understand Catalyst, but someone points you towards it, and you look at 25 different challenges or 10 different challenges, and none of them are relevant to you, but even beyond that, just the sheer volume of different streams makes it quite difficult to turn people on. It makes it hard for them to understand where they fit in this process, right? So that needs to really change. And I believe that we should be looking to empower people through this collaborative approach and give people the confidence that they can work together to come up with a shared understanding of what the priorities are. And then it doesn't need to necessarily get really, really granular, but just we can commonly agree that these would be good priorities to work on for the next X amount of months or whatnot. But we still need to consider all of those, square pegs trying to fit into a round hole, right? Those left of center problems that don't necessarily have a natural home, even if, there was a real full complement of the different themes and scopes of challenges that are, and different types of challenges that have been on offer. We need to kind of create conditions for people that don't necessarily fit anywhere. Sure. I don't want to dive into this. I'll share the slides and you can have a look at it. But ultimately, we should be thinking about, how do we create a desired state of the community still responsible for priority goal setting, but it's evidence-based. It's a consultative process, and we're still able to find ways for experimentation. And maybe there's an opportunity in time to come for there to be like follow-on funding pathways, right? Where there's really good demonstrable outcomes, and but there might not necessarily be a challenge that's right for the next fund. So what do we then expect? Well, those projects are going to fall off the edge of a cliff. We don't want to do that. We've already done, in terms of point 4, the milestone-based funding. We've started bringing this in already. And then ultimately all operations ideally would be optimized for efficiencies. So what does this look like? Where am I? So this is the idea. I think that we could look to streamline, and not just me, but the team, and I think others. We've talked about this in different sort of circles or informally, but there's a real opportunity to streamline Catalyst funding priorities. And actually, when you look at the data, and there's a whole bunch of slides that supports this slide, every single funded project fits into one of these 3 buckets. Every single one. And where they might not, there should still be an opportunity for this MISC challenge, right? But maybe, if we start with Cat 4, maybe you're new to the sector or new to the ecosystem. Maybe you don't want to compete against MMaker or DC Spark or, really well-known projects that are going to carry a lot of favor and, have great ideas and great proposals. Maybe, it might be not, I don't think fair is the right word to use, but maybe there's another opportunity where you could be in a less competitive space because you're looking at much smaller amounts, and your crazy wild idea is in the mix against other crazy wild ideas, right? So yeah, that's the idea for the open part. But ultimately, as I said, there's these really obvious categories: community outreach and impact, which would just be persistent for marketing and communications and community expansion efforts, right? Everything that's building on Cardano to create applications and new use cases, toolings and dApps, well, that's really well suited to products integrations. And then there's this development of Cardano, which would be, maybe in time to come, that might be something that is absorbed into Voltaire, perhaps, or as a result of Voltaire. And then, the focus of Catalyst becomes a lot clearer, I think. It's about seeding grassroots innovation to grow products, dApps integrations, community, engagement, activations, growing adoption, and growing the community. I've got one more slide, I think. So how would this work? That's right. So I could imagine that during Fund 10, once the proposal window is closed, because obviously everybody's going to be really, really focused on proposing, that then we kick off a series of workshops where we look at these categories, these cats, as we call them, and because obviously all the Fund 10 challenges are already been voted for, they're already in the bag. That so long as Fund 10's launching, it's going to launch with those challenges. And then when we look to Fund 11, the intention here, is to create a number of workshops, maybe devolve that out into all of the regional town halls as well, empower people to participate across the world, and start looking at how do we scope these categories so that they have a high level scope, but then there's also subcategories that would be relevant, so that we're able to kind of create a better metadata tagging system and approach, but also there would be subcategories where you'd be very concretely clear that your project and proposal would fit into that. What do I mean by that? Well, if I look at products and integrations, we've done some of this data analysis, and we've been able to slice and dice against every single project, and we can see subcategories emerging, right? And the same goes for community and outreach. The same goes for infrastructure. So I think I don't want to pause there because that was a real whistle-stop tour of some of the ideas, and just looking to get some input and feedback.
I think it's great because it slims down the overwhelm of where the question about where do I go to fit in is kind of answered more from that point of view. I think that's, and those buckets make sense to me. the consistency across challenge allows people to plan for more than one fund. And I think that transparency gives people a lot of security just because of knowing it, despite being funded or not. So definitely agree with just like that. And then the scoping part, you made me think that when you scope, it's maybe more for the reviewers to know, you know, like you're a reviewer focused on this area, or you've done that in the past. It makes it easier for a reviewer challenge team to hone in on, I am this and this rather than this and this and this and this. And it feels like that would be a really great thing for them. So I'm thumbs up on all that.
Appreciate that, Steph. Thank you. What does anybody else think? Patrick, Darlington, Nibia? No. Alex is already wise to this stuff.
Yeah, I definitely love this streamlining trend that's happening with the iteration here. The part that stood out to me was those workshops. I think it would be really important to get community buy-in every time. So that's a big thumbs up for that. And not just assume because we approved it 3 or 6 months ago, people are still cool with that. You know, going into the next round. Yeah, and putting them on the ballot is a little messy. Like doing the fun, I feel like I'm wrestling to get people to go look at the challenges and vote for them. It's not a priority for voters. So putting it around workshops and getting buy-in now will make a lot of sense to me.
Thanks, Darlington. And I didn't mean to call you out, Patrick, saying M maker, but
That's okay.
You're here. It's the first day that came to my mind.
Right.
What sort of thoughts have you got about this type of approach, Patrick? Anything off the top of your mind?
Not too much, to be honest. I think it's fine. I don't know. I'm always for simplicity and making things as easy as possible. That's kind of maybe difficult with the scoping process, because that introduces another layer for people to, you know, think about and vote on and so on. So I don't know about that. But in general, it's a lot better than what we currently have, because right now it doesn't make any sense, to be honest. Like NMaker got in as a category into the latest funding round, basically because I picked the amount of the size of it so small so that it definitely gets in. And it's very easy to abuse that, I would say. But yeah, in general, very positive.
Thank you. I mean, obviously, any opportunities to digest all this and then come back with thoughts and feelings about, you know, what it's missing or how to make it better would be really, really valuable. Melanie, have you got any initial thoughts? Anything that you want to say?
I'm with Darlington and Patrick in that I really do like that it's definitely a more streamlined, simpler approach. I think with the buckets, you're going to have proposers with a better understanding of what is expected of their project rather than an interpretation of what the category setting was meant to achieve. That's what I found in the past, that I actually needed to seek out further clarification on some challenge settings to just really understand what it was trying to achieve so that I could look at the proposal and see if it met those guidelines. So I like the fact that it'll be simpler also just for the proposers to understand what's expected in each category, and then for the assessors.
And not to forget the voters, right?
Correct. Definitely. I was wondering if Wolfram's program would be able to pull any information that would show like what the community is talking about. I saw the word cloud and the hashtags, and I was just wondering if that would be another way that we could kind of add a layer to gathering community consensus, was to find out like what are the problems people are talking about. Like I'm just not sure where he's getting all of his data.
We're pulling from Twitter, from Reddit, and from the Cardano forum. I think in the way that we're trying to visualize it, we're able to like point, metaphorically speaking, like point towards the relevant conversations that are happening currently. I think that's kind of the best outlet, rather than trying to synthesize what the conversation is. I mean, those synthesizations need to happen. There may be a bit longer, like, Kenrick just wrote a little piece about governance, and that was, I think, if you can somehow point to the conversation where then you can get that synthesis, is the direction we're trying to go. But yeah, definitely exploring conversations that are happening actively in social settings.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Appreciate everybody's probably going to drop off in a second. Nebbia, is there anything that you wanted to input onto this?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't make it earlier today. Missed most sessions of stuff. But just quick question on these categories. I really actually like the simplicity of it, and also the ability to go from fund to fund, to expect the same challenges, or to be able to have that continuity, as Steph has mentioned earlier. Maybe one slight concern would be like in terms of like specific categories that might exist. Like they do encourage, for example, for gamers, I don't know, it's just something that came to the top of my mind. Like obviously it would fall into one specific one, like, I don't know, products and integrations or something. But when you have the specific challenges, or like narrowed down challenges, they invite people to apply in those challenges. When it's broader, it just falls in the same category. And I don't know, I just have maybe a reservation that it might might not be as inviting for projects as narrowed down challenges. Like maybe small like reservations I have, but I do prefer the simplicity again.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Like how to simplify it so that it's broad enough, but not to dissuade people because it feels too broad. Is certainly something that needs to be explored a bit more. But when I come to say the data, right, and we can see that there's a subcategory around gaming, but unless you know that there's a subcategory there, and that there's been, how many projects, 27 projects funded in that subcategory, maybe it would switch you off, right? Or maybe you would be you wouldn't feel confident that you'd have a shot, or something like that. Maybe there's a way to be able to make sure that data and these sorts of ideas of subcategories and what's been funded previously is as open and as available to people as just understanding what the general scope or broad theme of the category would be. but it's super interesting. I'm glad that I've got some good feedback from you guys that you think this is a positive step. It's certainly not the finalized step, I would say, far from it. I think where there's a real opportunity will be not just the scoping of the broad categories, but thinking about where additional subcategories need to be added, or whether there's a certain number of subcategories that would be in a scope for a fund, right? And in this fund, we're only going to focus on 5 of these, or whatever. These are some of the sort of next level discussions I think need to take place amongst the community. So I intend to present this tomorrow on Town Hall, and then to run an after Town Hall session on this. So it will be another opportunity to gather more input, but I appreciate everybody having patience with me and humouring me whilst taking you through the journey. I think we can leave it there unless anybody else wants to cover anything. How are we all feeling?
I'm appreciative of everyone inviting me and having me here. So thank you. And thank you, Patrick, and for getting that going. So appreciate everybody's help. And yeah, thanks for allowing me to stick around and see some other stuff.
Very welcome, Steph. Great to have you here. Steph for CCv4.
Yeah.
We'll consider it.
Thanks for
Yeah,
joining.
we'll have a conversation with Stephen soon. I'll fix it up. We'll have this conversation next week within Circle, and then once we're over that, I'm sure we'll be able to set something up so that we can see what we were able to do together for sure.
Cool. Thanks, Chris.
Welcome. Okay, everybody.
All right.
We'll
Well, cheers, everyone.
Cheers, Steph.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darlington.
Bye.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Manley.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Patrick, I'll put the recording in the folder now.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers, man. Have a good
You
rest of
need
your day, man.
I think you need to leave before I can end the call. It's really strange. So it's not letting me leave right now.
Okay. All right, man. I'll dive off. I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Have a great day. Danny, are you there? Okay.